1. First of all, for those unfamiliar with my previous posts, I'm currently an employee at a chain New York-style bagel store. In addition to serving breakfast sandwiches and bagels by the dozen, we also serve lunch sandwiches. I have a bachelor's in music industry, and I currently have an appearance gig as a bartender at a local dive. Though I didn't come to the store as a full-time employee until about 2 years ago, I worked summers and holidays while attending college. Obviously, this isn't exactly where I want to be in my life at this point, but a man needs to eat and pay the bills, so here I am, though not for much longer, thank God. My fellow co-worker, Arya, will be my fellow protagonist in this tale. She was originally brought in by a fellow co-worker, and she's come really far since her first day with me training her, and we get along well. So now that we've established the main players and the setting for this round, let's bring in our lovely antagonist and get into the grease. Yesterday was a clusterfuck, to say the least. We've been short-staffed for a while now, so when the assistant manager had to leave early in the morning, due to being quite sick, my co-workers knew it was going to be a long one. When I arrived later in the afternoon for my shift, Arya, who'd been there since 7 in the morning, hadn't taken her break yet. It was really odd how my arrival in the afternoon seemed to cause all of the customers to suddenly disappear, though I don't think any of us have ever complained about that. Around 4 p.m, we're trying to get everything stocked and prepped for tomorrow, when we see a silver SUV pull into the front parking lot, right into the fire lane spot, which of course is marked with a sign, as it is illegal to park in. "Are you serious?" I said, exasperatedly. I wouldn't mind so much if the spot wasn't marked with an 8-foot sign, so I feel like no one really has an excuse. The passenger side front door opens, and out slowly climbs a small elderly woman. I felt my annoyance diminish by a few notes, as from my experience, some elderly customers just don't notice the signs, and most are more than willing to move their vehicle to an appropriate spot. The lady slowly makes her way into the building. She's already halfway to the front counter when her driver finally gets out of the car. It turns out to be her portly and haughty-looking middle-aged daughter. We'll refer to her as Karen. You already know where this is going, I'm sure. I looked over at Arya, and she can tell my irritability is back at a normal level. "Do you want to tell her or should I?" asked. "Don't worry, I've got it," she replied. I really admire Arya's ability to fake it for the customer, so I trust her to handle the situation. I let her handle both Karen and her elderly mother, who order a bagel with cream cheese. Before starting on the bagel, Arya respectfully lets Karen know that she is parked in the fire lane spot, and that she will need to move her car. Karen acts all apologetic, commenting, and her actual words, I shit you not, "My husband is a police officer," and some other drivel about how she's taking her mother shopping, and how she's worse than her kids combined. Weird flex, but okay. She moves her car, comes back in, and sits with her mother. A moment later, she comes over to me as I'm stocking our cooler and says, "Excuse me, but I wanted this toasted, would you mind?" I later found out that she had not let Arya know this, but I nod and say certainly, just give me 1 minute. I take a new bagel and put it through the toaster, and then walk over to collect the previous one. As I pick it up from the table, Karen looks at me and says, "Oh, were you afraid we were going to eat that?" I explained to her that since we are making her a prepared item, we would have to charge her for both if she wanted to keep both bagels. Pretty standard common sense stuff, right? She seems okay with that. I bring the new bagel over and they later leave. And the rest of the day goes by without fuss. Today, I open with my manager, Andy, and our assistant manager, Francesca. As we're getting everything ready, Andy lets me know that we received a complaint through our corporate office from a customer, claiming that the store had been a mess, and that they had been treated rudely. He says she ordered a bagel with cream cheese and that someone took her bagel away. Andy says I immediately put 2 and 2 together, and explained what had happened with Karen, saying that Arya could back up my account. Both Andy and Francesca look at each other, knowing that Karen's side of the story wasn't adding up. When Arya arrived later this morning, I told her what had happened, and she relayed her side of the events to both managers. We all resolved that Andy would call Karen later and try to resolve it. Well, our antagonist apparently couldn't wait that long. The phone rings during part of the morning rush while Andy is on break, and Arya picks it up. Sure enough, it was Karen, and she was hell-bent on getting some kind of compensation for... how she was treated. Arya does her thing, trying to figure out some resolution, when she makes the mistake of mentioning that she had been the one who'd originally served Karen. This dumpling of a woman goes off on my coworker. Quite literally screaming over the phone, she tells Arya that she's a disgusting human being, and you should be ashamed of yourself. How she needed to do better at her job, and that she'd never been treated so rudely. Karen caps it all off by calling my coworker a tarty bitch, and by this point, Arya, at her wit's end, says, "Well, I'm sorry you feel that way," and hangs up on her. However, Karen, ever the self-righteous one, fits in a quick, "We'll do better," before the call ends. Arya recounts to everyone else on the line what just happened. Honestly, it's a good thing that I hadn't picked up the phone, or else we might have actually had some fault on our end. I've seen a lot of self-important pieces of garbage during my time with this store, but I've never heard someone so resolute in their conviction that they were the victim, and it really affirms my belief that some customers cannot handle yelling at us in person, knowing that they'll be viewed by everyone inside and outside of the situation as the asshole. What really gets me is that I was actually pretty cold and callous towards Karen, but she apparently made the comment that I was sweet. Thankfully, this story does have a happy end. A few minutes ago, Arya informed me that as I was leaving, Andy had been on the phone with Karen. This cave troll tried to worm her way into Andy's pocket. He's worked for the company for 15 years and at multiple locations, so he knows a lot of customers. She tried to align herself as an old patron of his. And when that didn't work, our district manager, William, who'd been picking up the store's summer patio furniture at the time, was dragged into it. After 20 minutes on the phone of her demanding a $50 gift card for compensation, in addition to a free cream cheese bagel, William and Andy informed the actual tarty bitch of this tale that because neither Arya nor myself had done anything in breach of company or store policy, and though they didn't say it directly, I'm sure because the women decided to verbally assault their employee, who remained respectful during the call, that there was unfortunately nothing that could be done further. Andy generally advocates for us as his staff, but William usually doesn't give two shits about alienating anyone at the stores if it means keeping the customer appeased. So I'm really happy it worked out for us this once. It just boils my blood how people seem to lose their balls if it means confrontation in person, but have no trouble ripping employees who are just trying to do their jobs to shreds over the phone or online. Thanks for listening to this one, and hope you are all well. 2. Okay, so this happened back in 2016. I was working at a pretty decent 4-star hotel as a barman and barista, and it was around January-February, so it was a very quiet night in the lobby. I watched as a gentleman came through the doors and up to reception, who confirmed his booking, and I gave him his key. After that, he came up to the bar to order a drink and some food. I can't remember what he ordered except the pint of beer, but after placing the order and handing him his pint, I said, "That will be X pounds, please." The customer confusingly and rudely asked me, "Why have you not placed this on my company tab?" I told him that I was not aware of any company tab, to which he again very rudely said, "Well, you should." I stayed calm and told him that I would go check with reception, and asked politely that he take a seat. "I'm fine where I am, thank you very much." I asked reception if they knew anything about this customer having a company tab. It's a tab that he can basically spend as much as he wants on, and it will be charged back to his company. They said, "Oh yeah, here it is. Sorry, I forgot to send it through to the tills." Great. I walked back to the bar and told him everything was all sorted and I will transfer it over to the tab, and asked him to follow me to the restaurant and pick a table. On quiet days like this, I had to run the bar and the restaurant due to management not wanting to spend too much on wages. Management sucks. The customer then said out loud, so the few people in the lobby could hear him, "This is shit service." I was very confused but politely asked, "I'm sorry you feel that way. May I ask what the issue is?" He then proceeded to berate me at the top of his voice, saying that, "You should have known who I am. My company fucking pays for me to stay here all the time." I had only worked there a few months, and I had never seen him, meaning he had also never seen me. "You didn't even know that I had a company tab. You, the barman, are showing me to my table in the restaurant. Get me a manager." Sir, just calm down. Get me a fucking manager now! At this point, I admit that I lost my temper. Actually, I'll rephrase. I lost the fucking plot. I told this customer that I am refusing service for verbal abuse and disturbing the other guests. But I will go get him a manager, and as you can imagine, he did not like this. He carried on screaming at me as I walked past him and went into the manager's office. I burst out crying and just pointed to the general bar area. I went outside to cool down and have a cigarette, and afterwards was taken upstairs to explain what had happened to the general manager and the duty manager. They both seemed to be on my side but were completely bullshitting me. They said that they had spoken to the guest and advised him that he would be paying for his meals as he had tried to get them for free. What does it matter if your company's paying for it? That he had to order room service and was not allowed in the bar area, and that if anything like this happened again, he would be removed from the hotel. The thing is, I had access to his tab. I looked afterwards and saw that the manager had put his order through as refund. Management sucks. After this, I was told he was diabetic and had low blood sugar, which is why he got so wound up by everything. She said that she had a duty of care to make sure he got fed, and this is why they could not kick him out. I'm not sure what truth is behind this, but I'm calling bull. One thing that made the whole situation better is that another customer came up to me afterwards and proceeded to take the piss out of the angry customer, and told me that if I wanted him to make a statement to my managers about what actually happened, that he would, because no one should treat another human being like that. I thanked him and said everything had already been taken care of, gave him a free pint for his kindness. 3. Who raises their children like this, seriously? For some context, I live in a nice city and work at a casual fine dining restaurant. Yesterday I had a table of 2 ladies. They made a reservation for 5:15. One lady, let's call her Samantha, shows up on time for her reservation and sits in my section. I greet her immediately. I am smiling. She is smiling. It's an overall great beginning. She orders a Tito's Martini while she waits for her friend. Half an hour later, her friend shows up, let's go with Laura, and I let them catch up for a couple minutes before I introduce myself and ask if I was able to get a beverage for her. Browsing the cocktail menu, she responds, "I'll have the house Cabernet." "Unfortunately, miss, we do not have a house Cabernet." I list the wines by the glass available. Laura continues to look over the menu with uncertainty. "If you're unsure of a Cabernet," I continue, "I would highly recommend our Chateau Picard. It's my most popular Cabernet." She nods and I bring her a glass. I give Laura a couple minutes to enjoy her wine before I double check and make sure she was enjoying my recommendation. She says she is pleased with it. About 10 minutes later, Samantha stops me to ask for a Pinot Noir. I list them and she chooses herself. They also begin to tell me how great their appetizer is, still really enjoying themselves. A few minutes later, one of my co-workers comes up to me to explain that Laura was really upset with her wine because there was dirt at the bottom of her glass. I approach my table. "Hello, I heard that you had some concerns with your wine. I just wanted to let you know that what you saw on the bottom of your glass were sediments left from the winemaking process, and it's completely natural, especially in better wines." "Well, I'm an avid wine drinker, and I have never had this happen to me," she snapped. I smiled at her, knowing I wasn't going to get anywhere with her. "I see," I responded. "I'd like to send over a manager if that's all right with you." "Yeah, I guess." I find my manager and explain the situation. She begins to explain to me that the minerals are natural, yada yada, and I tell her I had already explained that to the table, and that they weren't interested in hearing it. My manager heads over to the table to explain that the particular wine is crafted to be more minerally than most wines, and that it is the company's #1 purchased wine. Laura then proceeds to order another glass of the Chateau Picard from her. A bit later, I am walking around the dining room and I notice that Laura is holding her wine glass towards the lights to look for what I assume would be potential sediment in her glass. I head up to them and ask if that glass is looking okay to her. She puts the glass down and rudely says, "You know, if you're gonna recommend a wine to somebody, you may want to let them know about all the chunks in it. That was incredibly off-putting." I have been recommending this wine for an entire year, and not once has anybody ever said anything poorly about it. With genuine empathy, I explain, I completely understand. I actually had no idea how that wine was. I am freshly 21 and don't really drink. This is definitely a learning opportunity for me. I'd be more than happy to get you a different wine if you're not enjoying that one. Laura scoffs and says it's fine. They order 3 more glasses of wine from me throughout their stay. I'm smiling the entire time and being incredibly polite. 3 hours later, they ask for their check and leave. Samantha left me $5 on a $154 bill, and left the cutest note on the top. It reads, "Really disappointed about the response to the wine and how you handled it. I'm a decent tipper, 20% plus. Not today." There are so many things wrong with that note. So many. I spent the next 75 minutes outside having a terrible anxiety attack. I thought I handled the situation perfectly fine. Did I really do anything to provoke that? 4. I bartend at a tiny place that's primarily a family restaurant over a bar. I mainly work the day shift that consists of 90% really cool retirees, who I've posted a few stories about before. This Monday, I was working the day shift as always, and it was close to my time to go at 5, maybe 4:30, when this young couple in their late 20s, comes basically skipping in to pick up a carryout, which I handle at the bar. Dressed in sweats and looking super smiley. I had glimpsed them walking in from the road, which isn't pedestrian-friendly, and the only residential thing within walking distance is a trailer park, so I assume they live there. They came up to the bar and started talking to the man at the end of the till, who I'm gonna call Regis because I don't know his full name and he looks like Regis Philbin. I saw the girlfriend laugh at something and Regis said something back. However, my rail had just filled up with post-work drinkers, so I told them I'd be right over while I re-upped a couple drinks and took an order. When I went back over to start the carryout, Regis was talking to another regular, and scooted out of his seat in the opposite direction of the carryout section, and the couple was gone. I asked, "Oh, where'd they go?" and Regis says, "Hey, I had money here. They took my money." And I said, "Oh geez, I was making drinks I didn't see," but he was adamant. The girlfriend came back in and said, "Hi, I want my food." Exactly like that. I could see the boyfriend through the window on the bench outside, furiously smoking a cig. At my place we do carryout by last 4 on the phone, so I warily ask, and she starts rambling off numbers rapid fire. And says it's just breadsticks, but can't remember the number, and books it outside saying, "I gotta ask my boyfriend." Regis follows her and says something, and I hear her exclaim, "You're crazy, you're crazy!" I watched Regis follow her out and talk to the boy, making him come back in. Regis is slightly yelling at them, saying they took his money. The boyfriend just stands there with the biggest, goofiest grin on his face, while the girlfriend starts yelling in old Regis' face. "That's insane, old man. We didn't do that, and you are drunk. I fear for whoever is on the roads with you, and I pray for your family." Her exact words. For reference, Regis wasn't drunk. He'd had 1 beer, I believe. He suffered a stroke a couple years back, and as a result can't move half his face and mumbles when he talks. So they produce a phone number and then mosey off to the bathroom. When they walked away, another regular, who everyone calls Drunk Bob, came over and says to Regis and me, "I saw that kid take your money, and everyone heard him said he was on 3 hits of acid when they came in." The other regulars agreed with the last acid part, although no one actually saw him grab the money. The whole time my boss and owner of the place was sitting at the bar watching, so I didn't need to take action myself. I got their carryout while they were gone, and while they're paying, Regis just sat down glaring at them, and then called them little thieves. My boss stood up and said, "All right, just let them go, we don't need them here." The girlfriend makes a big show of tipping me $3. She says, "I'm also in service, I know how it is. But I have to go. I feel so unsafe now. I'm so uncomfortable. Let's go, baby." The last bit was to her boyfriend, obviously, and I remember her exact words, because she honestly was the reason I'm convinced they took it. She said it so dramatically, but with no emotion. It was weird. They left in a huff, and everyone at the bar exploded with confusion and their take on the situation simultaneously. It's a small-town bar, everyone knows everyone, and everyone is interested. We have a pretty decent camera system, and luckily there's a camera pointed right at the carryout where all this happened. However, the aforementioned owner and boss is a 75-year-old man who, while full of piss and vinegar, is apparently also full of forgotten passwords, and locked himself out of the system after too many failed attempts. We have a technician coming out Friday to get us in, but until then I live in suspense. We also have their phone number and the girl's first name that she tried to give me to find their carryout, even though no one asked. The cops will handle it if it turns out to be true. 5. I, 24 female, bartend at a family-owned place that's mostly a restaurant with a little bar smooshed in it. I tend to work a lot of day shifts, which include a wonderfully cheap happy hour and the slow good hours on the draw lottery, which pull in a full rail of retirees, most days from about 2 to 5. Yesterday, 3 of my favorites were at the bar, and during a conversation about the seemingly randomness of life, one of the guys, Roy, ended up on the topic of how he met his wife while she was in cosmetology school, and he was her instructor. I was shocked, as I wouldn't have expected this former electrical lineman to have also mastered styling hair, let alone well enough to teach it to others. He said he still colors her hair, but he doesn't cut it because of a botched experience once. After this conversation, I had to share a story of an awful haircut I'd had. The guy wouldn't cut my bangs because he was afraid to cut curly bangs. Then he used a bristle brush on my wet curls, ruining them, which I explained to the bald old man was a no-no. And to finish, he also did not blow-dry my hair, as their high-end salon didn't have a diffuser. So I walked out with sopping wet hair. All 3 of these 80-year-old men started raising a big old ruckus about my hair, saying, "You paid for that?" and "He used a what brush on your hair?" Old Joe, who almost never talks, even piped up to say, "And I bet you still tipped him too, for what? Red hair." It got me thinking after they left about why they'd care or pretend to care about something that obviously doesn't matter in the least to them. Then it dawned on me that when Roy talks about the deal he got on bulk meats by driving 45 minutes to the Amish market, I enthusiastically listen and ask about where this market is and what he's using that meat for. Or when Bob went from flip phone to smartphone, I spent a good 3 hours teaching him how to use the basics, and especially how to save grandkid pics. Old Harry has given me over $2,000 in loose jars of change as my tip over the past year to help with student loans. Stu's fixed my Jeep's air conditioning twice when it took a poop and would only accept beer as payment. And Larry made me a personalized monogrammed lei in his print shop as a send-off when I went to Kauai for a month. When Lenny and Linda went out of town, I stopped by their house every day after work to water the plants and feed and love the cat. One of my closest friends is a 65-year-old woman named Jen I met at the bar. I helped trim the MJ she and her son grow, legal state, and babysit her little goats and big dogs when she goes out of town. I spend hours at her house with my pup, just sitting on the deck and listening to her talk about life. I realize these folks have become so much more than regulars. They've become my friends, or like a bunch of surrogate grandparents, and in turn they treat me like some beer-equipped granddaughter. I care about their lives and they care about mine. After graduating college, all of my own friends, save 2, live at least a 2-hour drive away. I don't see them like I used to, and it's been strange being a total loner. It's like somehow these folks knew that and decided to just treat me like a peer and integrate me into their small-town bar regular group. They invite me to barbecues and events all the time, though I usually have to work on those nights, of course, and are genuinely disappointed when I can't make the event. It's sweet and makes me feel appreciated in a very cool way. I wanted to post this as a reminder that behind every customer is a deep and intricately built individual. We are in the business of service, but that doesn't mean we can't make genuine connections on the job. I've been in the industry for 10 years, and the first 7 or so were spent thinking the public, especially the older public after working in breakfast places with the church crowd, was my worst enemy. Here I am now with several senior citizens I met while bartending at the top of my people I trust list. Life is strange, and I just wanted to share this with you guys. I am a 24-year-old woman, and my best friends are a bunch of extremely old people. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Spinning Plates number 67. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Well, as we go into the weekend, I've got a little project this weekend. Some work-related stuff, certainly, but also there was a sale on Steam. I think it goes on till Monday or Tuesday. I can't remember the exact date. I want to say the 29th. That would be Tuesday, actually. And they have the Fallout games on sale. That's everything apart from Fallout VR, I believe. I'm not sure, it might be on sale. And Fallout 76, which is not actually on Steam, for reasons. And I'm not going to say anything more about the last game, because that's apparently a very controversial subject among fans of that franchise. But the rest of the games are on sale. So, what I did is I have Fallout VR, and I'm rather enjoying it, but rather annoyed that we can't get the DLCs on it. They're not available. But I do understand that if you have the vanilla game, which is what we refer to the non-VR version as, you can actually, if you have the Game of the Year edition, you can port the DLCs over and get the extra content to then work in your VR version of the game. So this weekend I'm going to spend a bit of time trying to figure out how to do that. There may be streaming, I'm not sure. Possibly, we'll see. But I probably won't be doing that part live. Okay, and with that I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.